Very nice to meet you all. My name is Brigitte Vardi, originally from Hungary. I lived in Ireland, in Europe, for 25 years, and only the last 5 years I moved to the States, and I live in upstate New York. My work dwells in traditional craft, everyday working life, and I investigate this through sustainability and cultural heritage. I employ community workshop, video interviews, and I experiment a lot with materials.
Yeah, my name is Luis Steffenberg. Nice to meet you.
Very nice.
And I do art for many years, and I work in a synthesis of the medium. So I am interested in all of them. And the concept of put them together and work with the definition of art. So I'm interested also at the same time of what art is.
My name is Esperanza Cortez. I was born in Colombia. I was raised in the United States. And like my work, I'm in between. I feel like I'm not from here or there. When I do residencies in other countries, I feel as foreign as I do here. Even though I've spent my whole life here, I feel like I've never been fully accepted. And so I work with that edge of culture. And so my work is interdisciplinary. I like everything. I love to touch everything. I like to work with everything. But my work is especially informed by the aftermath of colonialism that we're still living through right now. That's everything that is happening politically, culturally, educationally. It's in our lives every day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yali Romagosa. I'm a Cuban-born multidisciplinary artist. I am living now in Queens, New York. My work raises critical questions about the exclusion and erasure of the Latino artists in the diaspora. I work with many mediums such as performance, video installation, photography, and costume design. Through my alter ego, Cuquita the Cuban Doll, I approach feminism and marginalization, and also the political trauma that I have been through coming from Cuba and living in the United States.
And is that alter ego has some traditional connection to the Cuban culture?
Yes. I grew up in the 90s, in the middle of the big depression in Cuba. So we didn't have anything when I was growing up. I used to play with a Cuban paper doll named Cuquita. She came in magazines that it was called Mujeres, Women. And that was my Barbie. I never had Barbies, I just have Cuquitas.
Yeah, I remember I worked in Ireland with a group of very young people. And when we were in the first, after the ice-breaking exercise, in the first round of question, like, what would you like to be? Would you like to study? So these were 10, 12 years old children. And everybody, all of them were just said, I don't know. So I created this puppet idea that every children should make their own puppet. And I presented to them that what about if you make your puppet and you name your puppet and the puppet is going to talk? And I'm going to ask questions from the puppet. And every children, after they made their puppet, they were able to express their feeling and what they want to do when they grow up, what they want to study, because the puppet was talking, not them. That was a very interesting, because I work and teach a lot with the community. So the alter ego, it's such an amazing concept and how to express.
So you work with engagement.
Yeah.
You are interested in the directly engagement.
With the people.
Okay. Very interesting, right? Something that is being in fashion.
Well, I've worked as an artist in residence at El Museo del Barrio. I started in I think it was the mid-90s. And that's what I've done for most of my life, is work as an artist in residence with museums and cultural programs, galleries. It's a fascinating thing because, art is able to pull people out of their everyday experience, which is part of what we're going to talk about is art healing, the healing capability of art. And I think it has a powerful ability for every age group. I mean, my youngest student was 2, my oldest was 97. So, lots of different approaches and projects. And I think it's powerful. And then, of course, it always ends up informing your work because you can't get so deeply involved with people and stay cold to it. It's powerful. I mean, so then that informs the way that I've created my work, because then I see what impacts people's lives.
Yeah, in times of the pandemic, the subject of healing is related to many things. But when you talk about art, like it can work as an auto healing. For example, I have the COVID last year by November 2020 at the very beginning, right? So I managed to do a self-portrait during the time that I was sick. I did a self-portrait, and I think they make me feel very good after I started doing it. But at the same time, art it become the major outlet for the people that was in their houses, right? So we need to take a look of that power that you just mentioned, and that relationship with the inner and the rest of the community. That is what you approach. Very interesting.
I'm an educator as well. So when you were mentioning the age range of your students, I was thinking my age range, and it's just very close. I spent all last year and most of this year teaching from my house. And it was really a moment that I learned how you said that art is really an outlet for many people. It was a moment that they really enjoy, children, families, and even adults. I was working with senior centers and so on. I feel like when we were talking about healing, for me, it's a very particular experience because through my work, I also try to find healing within myself. And I was born in the Cuban Revolution, the dictatorship of Castro's government. And I think we all were born in trauma. So I feel like we have to heal since the moment I was born. And then I have this other moment that I have to leave. I had to escape my country and come here and start a new life from zero, learn a new language, learn new costumes, a new culture that is so different from the place that I was coming from. And I think that was another moment that made me feel impacted emotionally, psychologically. And I've been healing from that moment since I was here and I came here. So I feel like the pandemic made me think about how strong I am and how strong we all are and can be, and how to share that experience that I'm living with others. Like, it's okay. We all have different situations, but we can come through this. And I feel very healing as well, talking with other people and having conversation, community is very helpful.
When we talking about healing through communication, we need to understand that we're talking about the immaterial proposal. Like, for example, when you work in a psychology aspect, you are not giving away a substance, but you are creating a language that affects the subject itself. So the medium, it become an excellent tool to heal or to make harm. Of course, this is depending what you think the art is. My point of view of art is very extensive. But we talk about art as an art, high art. I think that we are sitting here thinking in a high art, right? We are visual artists. We want to be in a museum, high art, high art. But there is the guy who do nice drawings in the corner and everybody go to talk to him and, hey man, do a drawing for me. Oh, I want to put that drawing in a tattoo here. And he also is an artist. So the healing of art not necessarily is constant. Art can heal and also can do harm. That's what I think.
That is a great form of art, and it's a great form of, elevating culture. Either to perform dancing or to perform instruments. It's great. And that can be, I believe that's very, very healing on many different levels. But I generally try not to think so much about the stuff that irritates me, and focus more on like what we're doing and how we're pushing certain ideas and, bringing attention to the community about subject matters, about ideas, using materials, whatever it might be, performance, to engage them in a completely different way, which then negates what they're receiving on a daily basis through the media.
That is also art.
Well, I'm agreeing and disagreeing with you.
And I love that you are mentioning performance because, in this time of the pandemic, all the spaces were closed. Performance artists, we face a crisis, right? It seems to be. We didn't have a place to perform. We didn't have an audience that could attend to our performances. So I said, this is a great time to do something different. And I started to make public actions, public performances in museums with a project that I call No Me Pongan en lo Oscuro, Do Not Bury Me in Darkness, where I raises awareness about why the Latin women living in the diaspora are not included in museums and mainstream institutions.
Museum of Modern Art, I saw her.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been in the MoMA PS1, MoMA, Guggenheim, the Metropolitan, and the Whitney Museum. And it's a project that it keeps growing.
And it was
moving.
all through Zoom, like it was all online. For
No,
people
we
to
went
view
to the
it.
public space and we performed in front of anyone who was around. I usually live stream on Instagram and make pictures and then I publish online for people to see. I was recently featured in Hyperallergic magazine. They made a wonderful article about my latest performance in MoMA PS1.
I mean, you and I are working with similar ideas. I used to do performance years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I did one at Documenta in the Sistine Chapel. But it was not. They were more like you, like guerrilla performance. It wasn't like someone gave me an invitation, I showed up. Everything I did, I could have been arrested for. But I wanted to highlight what everybody else was missing. But then I had my daughter, and it was just, I went into dancing, but then that became difficult. So then I ended up teaching because, I get to do what I love and I get to get some money. Wonderful, pay the rent. But then that, including the visual arts, like when you work with people, it's a give and take. It's not just, you receive as much as you give.
But also you become an observer of your own project, observer of the conversation between the people and yourself and an artist, and that observation somehow shapes the project. And I really like that element of having a conversation over months and months or years and years. Like most of my projects take years and years and years, and get to know people, having conversation, me opening up to them, they opening up to me, and then just observe the process and see what will come out of it. And the magic and the healing and the magic, and for me, it's a healing process. For me, it's also magic things to see and witness and observe as an outsider, the process itself. And for example, one of the last projects I did in Ireland with the Irish sheep farmers.
The markings we have is generally red over the tail. We used to have red on the horns as well, but we kind of dropped that since tagging came in. And the sheep will mix, so you can see them from a distance. Yeah, shearing the sheep is one of the hardest jobs you have to do with them, shearing and dipping. But mostly shearing it's slow. Generally, I need help. Usually, one of my sons actually helps me.
I think what was for me very magical moment when the farmer asked me to record our conversation, and I asked back why, and he said, because I never told any of my son what I'm telling you, and I realizing now that nobody is going to come back and take over the farm. So this is going to be the end of it, of my grandfather, my father, and my generation, and all of the traditional knowledge, the wisdom, all going to be lost. So please record this to me. And that, I find, that is the magic, when your conversation with the people turn the project into an I don't know, into your practice, into recording.
Well, I know what you're saying. I mean, I did, for a long time, I worked with elders. I'm considered a master artist working with elders. And the main thing that I worked on was working with people with memory problems, Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson. And I created projects to get them to release their memories, to be able to talk. And they sat with someone when we recorded what they wrote, and it was really magical. And to my surprise, all of a sudden I started doing collage. I mean, I never intended to do collage, never. But my collage is with pieces of embroidery, glass beads, and all the stuff from my former life as a dancer. So it was interesting, like, because that's what happens. It's like you use material to help people pull out important memories, to record important things, legacy projects, and then you end up being seduced by the same material.
Exactly. So I don't have we were talking that I work with textile, but the textile came out of the project.
Yes.
Then I made tea because it came out of other project. Then I do video, then I do performance, because the interaction with the people or with the memory it requires, or I am falling in love or driven into by the people to that material or that technique. Yeah, that's very interesting because it really feeds you.
It does. And then I took a bunch of jewelry classes because I felt like that was one of the things that could really trigger, because mostly older women who were widowed. And then I end up, after so many experiences, and it's fantastic, and, of course, there's moments where you get awards for what you do. But then it ends up in my work, but it doesn't end up in my work immediately. It takes years. All of a sudden,
It takes time.
and it's a fascinating thing because you see people who have arthritis challenge themselves and then talk and tell you stories that you just want to record everything. And then all of a sudden, you're like, hey, I always liked that material.
Yeah, it's interesting because all of that intent to bring back the language, the creative language, to the small setting. Because in some way, industrialization developed an expansion of many things, right? And the assembly line of many things. But then you have to stop and take a look of some of the roles from the originary groups and go back to the village or go back to the tribe where a common activity become a common way of living together and learning, and also recollect the history.
You really reminded me how I started this process of the conversation with people and investigate cultural heritage through this project, because it's to do with my own healing. So my grandmother, I lost my grandmother who brought me up. And it took me years to be able to face that. And suddenly I realized that every project I started, I didn't intend to talk about her, but it became a conversation between me and my grandmother. And then suddenly I was stepping into how she lived, what she did. And I felt really sorry I never had a conversation with him about where she came from and her traditional and her heritage. And it was all lost with her. So the project started, I started a project, nothing to do with my grandmother, and slowly she sneaked into it. And it's become a conversation, this project became a conversation with her and me. And for example, the tea project I mentioned, I just fall in love with the goldenrod. Like a whole meadow of goldenrod, the sun hit it in upstate New York in my walk, and it was just gold. It was a moment of gold. It's just a field of gold. And I said, what's that? So goldenrod, I started to research goldenrod. And during the history of goldenrod, there is Boston event of dumping all of the tea. So what are they going to do? How they are going to have tea? So the Native American teach them to use goldenrod. It's a really great tea substitute. And then I started to create like tea. And then suddenly my grandmother popped into the picture. This is what she used to do: collect herbs, dry them, make her tincture, make her tea. And then suddenly the whole project became about my grandmother. So I created this public intervention that I use goldenrod to dye my fabric, created poof for people to sit down, and I created 1,000 tea bags. Each became about her, how she was like a woman of hosting and caring for everybody. And this whole public intervention became like her. But I wasn't to do that. It's just somehow the healing process of losing her sneak into my project.
I mean, I think that often happens. I mean, like, it's odd that. So I was a very sick girl. I didn't really know what was wrong with me. But my grandmother lived with us. She came to live with us when I was like 11 and a half. And she would always make me teas when I didn't feel well. And after she died, within a few months, I was in the hospital with ovarian cancer, much to my shock. But I always felt like all the little things she did, the teas she made me, the broth, how sustained my health. As soon as she died, I became very sick. I mean, she died in my arms. It was a powerful, impactful moment. But I believe what she did was just so powerful. It gave me so much love. And so it's funny, it's like for a long time, my work was so much about her ideas, not her, I didn't paint her portrait, but her ideas, they were manifested as sculptures. And then later on, my other grandmother came around. And then lately, I've been working with ideas that are more about my parents and the things that I learned from them. They didn't intentionally teach me, but my mother embroidered, sewed, designed, crocheted, knitted, and my father, did all this metal work. So it's how people somehow they come and visit you while you're working and you're not aware until later.
Until later.
Well, where is there is many activities that we do in our everyday life, and is many creative puzzles that we do during the day. But when is that arts begin and social relationships, because sometimes it can be a very narrow trail when your intention as an artist can get lost. It's a very narrow trail between the art proposal and the art itself. So I find myself in the social engagement projects that can come out.
You were talking about family and how you felt very inspired with your family history. And I have a question for you. Do you think of yourself as survivors?
As what?
Survivors.
Survivors.
I really like the phrase that you said, helping me. So I'm not a survivor, but being an artist and making work, it's helping me to survive and helping me to go through a situation, but also to create this conversation with myself and through the conversation resolve issues, but through making my art. So I think the art is really helping us, and then what we put it back to the people. And I am with the same with you, that it's really important to help people to find the language of art and through the art to communicate. And it's very powerful. It's really, really powerful. One of my projects was about anti-fracking and go against the fracking companies, but with the farmer. And when the farmer realized art not only just painting, but it could express their opinion, and the opinion matters, and the people react to that opinion, then they embraced art. And we are talking about 70, 80 years old people living in the countryside. And when they realized the power of art, of expressing opinion and going against big companies, that was also a moment that it's brought home to me that keep going and keep working.
I did a project in Poland during a residency. It was at a time that the Polish president had just died the year before in a plane crash. The government was considering selling part of the Polish farmlands to German companies that produce vegetables, fruits with pesticides. And so I arrived in Poland and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is terrible, you know? And I had started my Opal project, which means eyes. I made these ceramic eyes or these paper eyes. And so with a community, mostly of older people and teenagers, we went through the forest putting eyes on trees. It was the craziest thing. It was fantastic. So my idea was, if nature was looking at us, how ridiculous are we? So we put eyes all over the forest and we went through different cities. Children were delighted, everybody's putting trees and everything. And I had never have been interviewed so much on television, on radio, in the newspapers. People were like, this is fantastic. And it got everyone talking about things they wanted to talk about to begin with. I mean, I wasn't doing it to get attention. I just thought we are living in such a messed up moment where a government is willing to sell what is the property of the country, of the people themselves, selling off farmland.
And then through art, powering the people to voice their way of looking at things and their opinion.
Which is what you're doing with
Yeah.
women.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And in the last performance, I was talking about empowering women and Latinx women in the museums. And everyone was just so agreeing, like finally someone said it. And they were so grateful to be in the moment and been experiencing that. So accessible.
I think empowering, what you just said, empowering contains the healing. Because once you're empowered, the healing begins.
Yes.